Hi everyone, it's the English Simmer here, and today we're going to be talking about The Sims 4 on console because I have a lot of thoughts, I know the community has a lot of thoughts, and I know that the console players, people who play The Sims 4 majorly on console, obviously have a lot of worries about the current affair when it comes to skin tones. So this will mainly be about skin tones, but also it's going to be covering something else that is super important to me. I do want to point out though, before we get into it, depending on your current viewpoint of the state of The Sims 4, I feel like some people could see this as an attack on the people who work on the game, and some people could see it as a defense for the people who work on the game. It's not either, it's just, I haven't left the house in months and I'm an overthinker. And so with this being my job, I basically just sit in my little mind hole in my brain and I'm like, what's going on right now? Let's think about this. And I have a lot of different viewpoints or just logical points that I sit over and go through in my brain, and I kind of just want to word vomit them all to you. So if you have no idea what's happening on console and what the discussion about skin tones has been about, obviously November, early December, we got the PC update, which was skin tones had been updated, they had sliders. Console also got that same update. They also now have sliders for the skin tones. They have the 100 plus skin tones. I've actually just taken the same sim, and what I've done is I've gone for the darkest skin tone under each category, and then also one of the medium ones. So the middle skin tone in warm, neutral, and cool are the next three sims, so it's all the same sim, and you're probably thinking it really doesn't look that bad. The skin tones do not look bad on console. What's the big fuss? The big fuss is when it hops into live mode. Also keep in mind I am playing this on my PlayStation 5. That's not a flex for those of you who's gonna be like, don't flex that you have a PS5. I bought it with my own money. I genuinely just love PlayStation and I've always bought their newest consoles, and I managed to pre-order one. So yes, I have a PS5. No, it's not me flexing. I just wanted to give you context as to what this is running on. On this one over here, you can definitely see the pixels. You can see the redness around the nose area. Very, very blotchy. Same on this sim here, and you're probably not going to pick it up on all of these skin tones. However, there is also red blotchiness, and you can see the pixelation around his mouth on this particular skin tone. It mainly affects the forehead, the side of his forehead. I've seen noses look really bad, with red. It looks as if they have tiger stripes, the get to work here. Look at that nose. It looks as if they have the illness tiger stripes that comes with get to work. That's usually how I describe it. And I'm gonna try and get a little bit closer. You can see that his nose is a completely different color to the rest of his skin tone. Obviously, with all the new variants that we got, this is really, really varied depending on which skin tone you actually use. This one has redness on his cheeks and then this really light patch of skin. Again, he has a really light patch around his nose. It shouldn't look like that, is what I'm trying to say. And like on PC, this all comes down to compression when it comes to the game and it compressing skin tones. I don't know the technical details behind it. Whenever I do a video about skin tones, I fully hold my hands up and say, I've never designed a game. I don't really understand the processes. I don't really understand what the compression is. However, I do know that the Sims 4 on console actually just has a base option that it runs at. You can't even change the visual options like you can on The Sims 4 on PC. That also means you can't have uncompressed sim textures. That's an option that you had to enable on PC and Mac to actually basically receive this update of the non-blotchy skin tones. Now that you know the issue and I've kind of given context as to what these skin tones actually look like on a PlayStation 5. Keep in mind, this is a next-gen console. Like, the big selling point of this was, oh my god, the graphics are going to be incredible. Like, it has such a strong, like, SSD. It's going to be way more powerful than previous generations of console. And there's still no update for The Sims 4 on PS5, which kind of takes me on to my first point, and what I hope I don't see people saying as a defense, because this is just me thinking, like, logically about the reasons that, like, this could be happening and why this fix is taking so long. Because keep in mind, this update dropped like early December, late November, and then they actually addressed it in their replies on like the 21st of December. Then they recopied that tweet in the beginning of January, and yet none of the gurus have kind of like described why this is happening. So this is just like me forming my own ideas as to maybe why we haven't had an update on it. Because if you think about it, we now have PlayStation 4 or Xbox One. Then we have the Xbox One S series or X series. I get confused, but you have like a higher grade Xbox One and you have the PlayStation 4 Pro. And then now, obviously, on top of that, you have the PlayStation 5, which is the next gen console, as well as the Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series S. So confusing. I get confused between consoles. We basically have 3 different consoles for each console right now. Like, those are the main 3 that The Sims 4 currently runs on. And I can imagine it's quite difficult to update this because it works the same way as it does on PC. You know, not everyone who plays on PC got to see this update in motion because their computers aren't strong enough to run those uncompressed sim textures. Like, it kind of just depends on what your specs are, how your computer runs it, and if it lags like extremely bad with uncompressed sim textures, you aren't really gonna get the benefit of that update, which is currently how it is for PlayStation and Xbox, because they just don't have that uncompressed sim. And I definitely think it's going to be harder for the team to push out an update for those 3 consoles. Like, I don't know if they're going to have to be different. Maybe eventually PS5 and Xbox Series X, the new generations, maybe they can have an uncompressed sim texture option. Maybe this new hardware can actually run that. However, like, building a base of how that's going to work on the previous consoles is definitely more difficult. We've seen it recently with Cyberpunk, for example. And so logically, I'm like, yes, this is going to be difficult. And the thing is, I would understand it if the team were to come out and say, look, we're having difficulties with this update because of A, B, and C. That would be the best case scenario in this situation. I think we need more transparency when it comes to why things aren't happening as soon as we expect them to be. Like, I get these things take time. I get they don't want to rush this, especially when it comes to inclusion and representation in the game. But the fact that PC players have had it for like the last 2 months and it's been working absolutely fine. There hasn't really been an official statement. There hasn't been a blog post. There hasn't been any explanation as to why it's taking so long. They've said that they're working on it, but they haven't given any context to that. And I always say this when it comes to problems in The Sims 4. I feel like we need more transparency. I've said that literally from the beginning of, I said it in The Sims 3, and we go through like ebbs and flows of transparency. I think sometimes the team do it really, really well. People were having issues with their Sims being born and they didn't look anything like their parents, or it attached themselves to the lighter skinned parent instead of like blending the skin tones together. The team were brilliant about that. They were like, hey, we're working on a hotfix. We want to get this sorted. We've seen all of the reports. We're working on it. And then like within a week, I think it was, we had a hotfix for that, which I love that. That was great. However, it definitely feels like some issues for some reason just like get talked about more. And with this being such a big thing when it comes to inclusion, I think they need to address why it's taking so long. I also understand that they work with PlayStation and Xbox. SimGuru Legacy in the past, when updates have dropped for console, keep in mind that packs used to be released a lot later on console, as did updates, and they've said it's because they're working with their partners, which obviously in this case is PlayStation and Xbox. So I can assume from that these updates probably have to go through PlayStation and Xbox. They probably have to have rigorous testing to see if they work on their consoles, because obviously PlayStation and Xbox don't want to be held accountable if these things don't work. I kind of lost my train of thought on this one and just didn't round up the point that I was trying to make, but with having to go through those partners, I understand why it takes a little bit of extra time, because obviously when you're updating on Origin, EA owns that, so they can just be like, yeah, we're happy with this update, we're gonna press forward and we're gonna release it. Whereas when you are working with outside external partners, one, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Literally every company that I've worked with this year and last year has been a little bit slower because of the worldwide current state, basically. So we have to keep that in mind when we are thinking about this, from a perspective. However, also it takes time because they have to look over it and they have to approve it themselves. And another really important update that sits very, very close to my heart is accessibility within video games. And this got brought up to me the other day. PC have actually had this update, I'm fairly sure, since Discover University, or maybe even Get Famous. I can't remember when PC got this update, but it was the UI scaling, which basically means that there is a menu that you can choose to size up your UI. It's an absolutely great feature for those who are partially sighted or legally blind. And this got brought up to me in a tweet because Hufflepom actually said, my friend James would love to play The Sims 4 Paranormal, but the lack of UI scaling on console makes it impossible. I was born legally blind, even so I've been interested in video games for most of my life. Some games are easier for me to use than others. When I first learned of the Sims series, I bought Sims 3 and enjoyed the game. So when I found out I could get Sims 4 for my console, I bought it. Unfortunately, I ran into some difficulties I could not overcome. The UI was not only different, but everything was much smaller than it had been in Sims 3. This made it next to impossible for me to do anything in the game. When my friends asked me how I was liking the game, I had to explain to them that I could not play it. This makes me sad for other people in similar situations who are unable to play the game. It completely makes sense when you think about the big resolutions that people play this game on. I play this on I think it's a 27-inch screen, and for me personally, I'm sat so close to it. However, if I took a few steps back and I was sat on my bed, I definitely wouldn't be able to read the notifications that came up in this game. And The Sims is so text-based that I really hope that we can get a UI scaling for The Sims 4 on console at some point, because it just currently doesn't exist. It's not in the game options whatsoever. And I remember SimGuru Legacy tweeting about this back in April of 2020 and how they were looking into it. And I haven't really seen anything since then, but then again, I haven't been going out of my way to look at that stuff because I never really played console before I started my trophy hunt. So I've also had that ignorance bliss of just not thinking about what console players are actually going through. And again, just like PCs having issues when it comes to the specs that players play on and the range of those specs, you could have the highest end PC with the brand new GPU, but then it still had to work on gaming laptops at a sufficient rate that it was even worth people spending money on this product. I get that, and it's the same when it comes to PCs. Not only do we have 3 different consoles now, but there's also a bunch of different things that people play The Sims 4 on console on when it comes to their screen. Some people have their consoles hooked up to their projectors. Some of them have them hooked up to the newest 4K TVs. Some of them have them on a standard HD TV. Some of them have them on a monitor, like me, for example. So there are a lot of factors when it comes to UI scaling and like what screens people are playing on. However, I haven't seen anyone discussing that since April 2020 and saying like, hey, we're doing some market research. What do you currently like sit and play The Sims 4 console on? We would really love to hear it. I haven't heard or seen anything on my Twitter. And again, maybe that's because I haven't been paying attention to it, but I even like tried to search for it and I couldn't find things. So I definitely feel like this needs to be brought up again, which is why I included it in this video. So at the end of the day, like logically, my brain is telling me there's probably a lot of work going into this right now, and there's a lot of experimentation happening and like research going on behind the scenes. That's what I'm genuinely hoping for, and I genuinely think that probably is the case. However, I would personally love it if Xbox, PlayStation, and the Sims team could all come together and like give a statement or give us a timeline, just give us something that helps with knowing that these issues are being looked at. And I also hope this doesn't turn into, oh, a game changer has finally talked about it. Now maybe EA might do something about it. Because honestly, console players have been speaking about this for months. I am lucky and very, very privileged to be able to sit and record this video and like hopefully hit an audience. However, console players who play this game day in and day out have been making videos, they've been making noise on Twitter, they've let the team know what issues they have been facing. So this isn't on me, this is all on them and their hard work and like what they've had to go through to get to this point. Which reminds me, I actually watched one video about this. I usually don't like watching videos when it comes to like these type of topics because I don't want to like copy anyone or like inadvertently say what they've said in their video. However, Shani ZA, I think it's pronounced Shani ZA, I will leave a link to their YouTube down below. I know they've been very, very vocal over on their YouTube channel, and also if you are a console creator or simmer and you haven't had really anyone to watch or you don't know their channel, I will link it down below. Very good content over there, and also mainly a console player, which is so nice to see. And whilst we're talking about console, there's been another point that's been brought up to me in my mentions over on Twitter, which is, are there any game changers who are console only? And what is Sims Camp like when it comes to console players? I haven't seen a console at Sims Camp since the console release, which was around the time of Cats and Dogs, I want to say. However, I definitely know that any early access event that I've ever been to has been on PC, minus the ones that were specifically for a console-only game, such as Detroit Become Human for the PlayStation. That was a PlayStation exclusive, and therefore they worked alongside PlayStation with that. So I definitely think early access events work differently if they're partnering with consoles. So I'm not really too sure how like early access game changer program would work for console. I think they definitely need to come up with a plan with Xbox or PlayStation for that. And that's also the same when it comes to like Sims Camp and like early access events that we do from home for expansions and things, because they need to give us access to either an early build or they need to update the game and patch the game so that we can install the pack. So I guess for the updates, it would be kind of similar because I think console are now getting the updates the same time as PC. I don't know how it would work for like actual events. However, that's something I would be all for. I would absolutely love it if there were console-only game changes. I think it's a really important part of the community. Like I said, it's a really big deal and it's such a big market for The Sims 4 that I personally would love to see it in the future. I don't know if that's ever gonna be an option, but I have my fingers crossed that it could be eventually. So thank you guys so much for sitting through this video. I'm sorry if my thoughts were a little muddled. They always are when I do these types of things, because like I'm talking about something and then a new thought enters my brain and I'm like, oh yeah, I have to talk about that. So I hope that this was still easy to follow and that all the information was there. It gave you context, just like a little bit of behind the scenes in my mind and how I think about these things. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will speak to you all in my next one. Bye now.